Talking more has never saved a relationship, but listening differently has. That's the thing nobody tells you when you're in the middle of a disagreement that somehow escalated into something much larger than it started as, that the problem almost never lives in what was said. It lives in what the other person felt while you were formulating your response. And most of us, even the most loving, most well-intentioned partners, have been doing this in a way that quietly costs us more than we know. What communication researchers have found, after decades of studying couples who thrive versus couples who slowly come apart, is that the single most predictive factor in relationship longevity is not how often you argue. It's whether each person feels heard during the argument. And hearing someone, truly hearing them, is a completely different skill than listening to them, one you were probably never taught. Today we're going to look at what actually happens in your body and your partner's body during a conversation that's starting to heat up, and the two specific shifts that change everything about where it goes from there. From the outside, you are a person who listens. You let them finish. You try not to interrupt. You care about their perspective. That's all real. But inside the conversation, in the half second before you respond, something happens that you might not be fully aware of, a kind of internal motion toward your own point, toward the part of what they said that you need to address, toward the defense or the clarification or the correction that feels urgent because you don't want to be misunderstood. And here's the identity level fear underneath all of it. What if the problem isn't that you argue too much, but that even when you're quiet, you're not really there? What if you've been physically present in conversation for years and emotionally just slightly somewhere else? That's not a character flaw. It is what happens when no one ever showed you the difference between waiting to speak and actually receiving someone. Here's what's happening neurologically when a conversation starts to feel like a disagreement. Your nervous system, which cannot distinguish between emotional threat and physical threat, begins preparing you to defend yourself. Your heartbeat increases. Your peripheral vision narrows slightly. The part of your brain responsible for empathy and nuance begins to go offline in favor of the part responsible for self-protection. And from inside that state, you cannot actually hear another person. You can only hear the parts of what they're saying that feel like evidence for or against something. This is not weakness. This is human wiring doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is that your partner is not a threat. They are a person who loves you and is trying to be understood by you. And your survival brain cannot tell the difference. The long-term cost of never learning to override this is that every important conversation leaves a faint residue of not quite feeling heard. Not enough to name. Just enough to accumulate. And then one day, without a single dramatic event to point to, one or both of you stops bringing the real things. Because somewhere underneath the logic of it, the body has learned that bringing something important leads to feeling more alone than before you brought it. That is the thing worth being afraid of, not the arguments. The slow stoppage of the real conversations. And the uncomfortable truth that tends to arrive here quietly without force is that most people genuinely believe they are better listeners than they actually are in the moments that count the most. Not because they're dishonest. Because listening, real listening, feels from inside almost identical to waiting patiently to speak. You've done this. So has everyone. It doesn't make you a bad partner. It makes you someone who hasn't learned the difference yet. So what actually changes it? The first thing, and I want to stay here because this is where everything shifts, I call it the full receive. It is the practice of letting what your partner says actually land in your body before you generate any response at all. Not a performance of listening. The actual thing, practically it sounds like this. They're talking, and something they say creates that familiar internal motion toward your counterpoint. And instead of following that motion, you notice it, you feel the pull, and you let it pass. You take one breath, slow enough to feel in your chest, and you say something that reflects back what you heard before you add anything of your own. Not, I hear you, but the but erases everything before it. Just, what I'm hearing is that you felt dismissed when I did that. Is that right? That reflection, those few seconds of genuine receipt, do something to the person in front of you that almost nothing else can replicate. Their shoulders drop a quarter inch. The defensiveness in their voice softens, because their nervous system has just received the signal it has been waiting for. That they don't have to fight to be understood, that you already got it. Picture a Saturday morning, coffee going, sun coming in low through the kitchen window. Both of you tired in that particular way that makes everything feel more fragile. The conversation starts to go somewhere edged. And instead of the usual pattern, instead of two people talking past each other with increasing volume, one of you stops, takes a breath slow enough to actually feel the lungs fill, and says, "I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Can I tell you what I heard?" The sound of that question in a tense room is like a window opening. Something in the air changes temperature. That moment is available to you in any conversation, at any point. Now, the second shift. This one is faster, sharper, and will make you slightly uncomfortable to try the first time. I call it the drop, and it is the decision in the middle of a disagreement to completely let go of your point, not forever, but for now, and ask one genuine question about theirs. Not a strategic question designed to reveal a flaw in their argument. A real one. What does this actually feel like for you? Or even more simply, what do you need me to understand that I haven't understood yet? That question does something almost unfair to an argument. It disarms it from the inside. Because no one can stay defended against someone who has genuinely surrendered their position in favor of curiosity. Your point will still be there in 5 minutes. It will keep, but the moment of real contact, the one where your partner realizes you care more about them than about being right, that moment either happens or it doesn't. And if it doesn't enough times, something essential starts to quietly close. The person who practices these two things, who receives before they respond and who asks before they assert, becomes someone their partner actively seeks out during the hard moments, not out of habit, out of trust, out of the knowledge that this person, this specific person, will not turn the conversation into a contest. And that trust, once it's built, changes the entire texture of a life shared together. You are someone who wants to be that person. The fact that it matters to you this much is the most important part of all of it.